Hello, and welcome to the Eurasia FLEX-Ability Follow-On Webinar. We're going to talk about storytelling by using only what we have to tell a story. And that's lesson number 1. Use what you have. We've all seen super creative images and videos and thought, oh, if only I had the newest this or the latest that, I could make something really creative. The truth is, storytelling doesn't require new tech or gadgets. Use what you have. Use the technology you have. Use your own experience. Use your family, your friends, your work, or your hobbies. John Lennon from the Beatles once said,
I'm an artist, and if you give me a tuba, I'll bring you something out of it.
Artist can sound pretentious, but an artist is really just someone who is skilled at a particular task. It's someone who creates new things with skill and imagination. Lesson number 2. Embrace your inner artist. Artists do 2 things really well. They study and they practice. If you want to be a great photographer, learn as much as you can about photography. The same is true if you want to be a great storyteller. Analyze the techniques of storytellers you admire and try to understand why they're successful. Practice, when it comes to storytelling, is just another word for creation. People become writers by writing. Storytellers become storytellers by telling stories. So tell stories. Some will be better than others, but it's all part of the process.
The only way to learn these things and get better at these things is by doing it over and over and over.
So to be a storyteller, you need to 1. Use what you have. 2. Embrace your inner artist. Study and practice. And 3. Get my attention.
Do you think I deserve your full attention?
There are a million things to do and see on the internet. Yet all of us have the same number of minutes in a day. How can we make people care about our stories? We need to get their attention. One way that we talked about at the workshop was through a hook. Another way was through conflict. We talked about 5 different types of it. Here are some other ways to get my attention. Next, David's going to talk about how to utilize all 3 of these things to capture someone's attention when it comes to storytelling.
All right, welcome to the webinar. After that incredibly rousing introduction,
let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
During this webinar, there will be questions asked on screen as well as audibly. We will give you time to write your answers in the comment section. Just make sure you're signed in. Please put the question number before your answer. Points will be awarded based on correctness and speed, and whoever has the most points and also does the assignment will be awarded a special prize. Also, feel free to ask questions or make comments throughout the video in the comment section, and we will answer in the strand. Good luck, and here is your first question. What is your full name and what country are you from? So we got hooks, conflict, and in case you didn't get it that first time, the third thing we are going to talk about is a combination that will be the focus of our webinar today: photography and writing. It's a formidable combination that we will call rotography. What? No, in all seriousness, photography and writing are both art forms that when put together will help us create amazing stories. So here's what we will do. First, I will explain some photography techniques that can help enhance the story of your photograph. Then, we will talk about various writing techniques that work well when writing with photography in mind. Then we will talk about what's worked for me, some of my friends and colleagues, as well as some of my inspirations in the rotography field. And then last, I will take you on a trip with me to photograph and write about some stories I have the privilege of sharing while here in Ethiopia. Before all that though, BAM! Question! What type of platform allows for photography and writing to be expressed in one place? Hint rhymes with the inane phrase Focialpedia. Social media is the perfect place to use the combination of photography and writing to tell your stories and have an immediate audience, as well as instant feedback. And so we will focus on that so you don't end up with the wrong tools for embracing your inner artist. So without any further ado, photography for storytelling. Just so we're on the same page, let me identify some of the parts of a photo that we will be talking about throughout the webinar. In many photos, the subject is like the main character of the photo. The foreground is the space in front of the subject, and the background is the space behind it. These are like the setting of your photo. Other interesting things in the photo are called objects and can be supporting characters or additional elements in your story. The great thing about photography is that all these combine visually to create a story that can have plot, conflict, resolve, and all sorts of things. Photography is deep, and there are a lot of rules. Approximately
1 million.
But the ones I have chosen help tell the story of your subjects more effectively. So here we go. First is the rule of thirds. Basically, if you place this grid over an image, the rule is that putting your subjects and objects on the intersections of the grid or along the lines helps create a well-balanced photograph. Here we have my beloved Flex alumni Jildis on the top left third, and a potentially egg-bearing host mother supporting Jojo in the bottom right third. Elements can go along the thirds, like in this picture of some of my former Jojos from my school. This also works with square images. In fact, when you choose a photo on Instagram and move it around, it will show you a grid to help place your subjects. And most phones have options to turn on a rule of thirds grid. Okay, time for a question. According to the rule of thirds, where is this sweet baby's head located? Next we have framing, which is basically the idea of using natural shapes and forms in your photos to frame your subject. Here you see the area around this chef creates a square around him, which helps bring attention to him in an aesthetically pleasing way. We all put frames around photos of things and people that are dear to us.
What is this horrid creature? A goblin mutant.
That's my wee lad, Gimli.
Framing is just an internal version of that. You can use the foreground to frame subjects, you can use the background, or you can use creative things like reflections or other distortions like this super cool rare orb, for example, which is mine. Frames can be either created or found, and they are great for telling the story of your subject in a unique way. After hanging out with you guys for a few days, I think you already get why frames help photos. Okay, time for a question. Is framing used in the foreground or background of this photo? Our last composition technique is contrast. In this case, we are talking about the contrast between subject and background. It can be a contrast of light background and dark subject, a contrast of color, or of course, a light subject and a dark background. The point is that we are able to see our subjects more clearly when they don't blend into the background. Bam! Time for another question. In terms of contrast, describe the subject and the background of this photo. So that's it for composition. Next we have lighting. There are all kinds of lighting techniques and theories, but today we are only going to go over 3 simple ones, and they're pretty self-explanatory. Front light goes toward the front of the subject and makes a nice clear photo of all features of the subject that are facing the camera. Backlight comes from the back and creates detail around the form of the subject, creating a silhouette. The subject, instead of being someone, can be in a sense anyone. This creates a sense of mystery and anonymity.
Total union and anonymity.
Sidelight obviously comes from the side, and it creates a nice artistic effect. The shadows coming across the face give this a natural feel that I personally prefer. Near windows and doors is a great place to find sidelight. Okay, it's about that question time. So this photo has a mix of light, but which do you think is the dominant one? So now that we've gotten through composition and lighting, here are some do's and don'ts when it comes to shooting photos for storytelling. First, the do.
Okay.
First, use your composition wisely. By that, I mean put your subjects and objects where you want so that you are telling the story that you choose. That might mean moving the subjects around, or it might mean moving yourself around. Next, make sure the subject is well lit. Nice, soft, even light that doesn't cast shadows is great. Dawn, dusk, and cloudy days make for great lighting. Next, and this is a tip from Mr. Benjamin, fill your frame. Whether you are shooting head to toe, a headshot with that stylish half-face thingy that the kids are doing, or somewhere in between, getting as close as you can without losing your story elements helps us connect better with the emotion of the subject, which helps your story. Speaking of emotion, that's our last do. Poses and group shots are nice, but real stories are told when you are showing real emotion. It doesn't always have to say everything, but a natural photo is like a good hook that makes us want to know more. Okay, now for the don'ts. The first don't, no distractions. Like in this picture, I wanted to tell the story of those answering questions, but there are a lot of distractions in the background. So I moved over so that the viewer has no other choice but to see the story I intend. Next, no boring photos. By that, I mean try and take your picture in ways that show your subjects how we may not always see them. The picture on the left is quite typical of how I would see my host sister in the hammock. But the one on the right is shown in a way that you wouldn't see just standing there, making it more interesting to look at while still maintaining my story. Okay, so even though everyone's entitled to their own opinion, there are certain kinds of lighting that almost everyone agrees is not good for subjects, and direct top light is one of them. But before I continue, a question! What is the name of this animal? Bonus points if you know the Latin name. I mean, I don't even know, so good luck. Raccoon eyes is what we call it. Top light creates shadows that resemble this nocturnal creature and make it a lot harder to connect with our subjects because the windows to their souls, their eyes, are heavily tinted, so to speak. So that's it for our don'ts. But one more thing. These rules are useful, but they are not laws. You may follow them all, but it's not 100% guaranteed that you'll have a good story.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
Sometimes moments go so fast that you can't think about all that. I mean, how often are you going to see Ben with this glorious wide-mouth smile? I couldn't ask our friend Mosine to do it again or have Ben face the light, so I just shot from where I was. Or this. The contrast would have been amazing if not for that white pillar, but they had just met and his expression was too good. And if I tell you that this man guessed that I was Filipino from California and that my friend lived in New York, the story makes up for the photo. It was a sunny but cold day last spring in Kyrgyzstan. I was in a hurry and my Neva was not acting right as I made my way to the notary's office. The lawyer was waiting there and 2 of my commission was also waiting there, as well as the notarist herself. We were going to sign our papers to finally legitimize the organization that I had been thinking about for years. And one by one, we went up and signed with the lawyer looking over our shoulders and the notarist impatiently pushing us forward. Finally, the last person came up, Altanai. I looked at her as I saw her hand move across that paper and heard that gentle scrape of the pen, and I realized that it finally was real. I put my head down, closed my eyes, and said to her, "I promise I'm gonna make you proud." Now, I'll be honest with you, this isn't a great picture, but that's the power of storytelling, where you can take a picture like this that's not great, but still make it compelling. Let's get into some ways that I've done that, and that others have done that I think are useful. There are a lot of ways to get people's attention.
Excuse me?
We are going to go over 5 ways that when combined with photography, help you keep people's attention. First is a dialogue. This is my most engaged with post on Instagram over the last 2 years. Writing a conversation between two people is a great way to make people feel like they are listening and watching the characters of the story depicted in the photo. One thing I like to do is try and give background information through the dialogue without ever actually saying it. So without me saying, you know she's my mom, you know I'm leaving, you know there's a third person, and you know that she is trying to control her emotions. It's funny because people were like mad at me saying, man, why don't you write her? That's messed up. You know that she misses you. And I was like, I mean, I did. I do write her. I mean, I'll write her later. I think with dialogue, people really have the chance to get close and identify. And even though the photo isn't the best, the story made it work. Next is a full narrative of events. I won't go through this whole thing, but this is the day after Jildis didn't pass the first round. I was so inspired by her response that I had to write about what happened from my perspective. I used dialogue, deep personal inner thoughts of mine, and a description of setting and events to talk about this conflict that she had, that I had, and the triumph of the moment, even though the story wasn't finished. The crazy thing is that after this, a woman asked me if she could host Jildis anyway, if we could find a way to get her to America that very year through Rotary or whatever. I told her that we would wait a year to see how Jildis did, and when Jildis passed, this woman and her family applied and became her host family. All that from a story I put online. Another is humor or jokes. I put the joke that this one beautiful woman said to me before we got running water for their school, and I showed one school where I wrote a grant to get running water, and this ex-supermodel from Germany that I'd never met before ended up writing me out of the blue to tell me that she wanted to fund putting water in as many schools as possible in my province. We got 9 schools that had absolutely no running water to get water heaters, pumps, sinks, and all that, just from a Facebook post I wrote to share with my family and friends. That's when I knew that this combo of photos and words was powerful. But honestly, it doesn't always have to be about that kind of impact. My friend Estelle started just like all of us, but now she has almost 50,000 Instagram followers and uses a combination of storytelling techniques to spread her message about lifestyle, humility, and shedding light on being a Kyrgyz woman that married outside of her culture but manages to maintain it. What I love about her is that she is super honest in funny ways in her posts that are usually avoided by those with profiles that are also really manicured. Here she sets up with a bikini shot only to hit us with the childbirth shot, talking about how she grew a mustache overnight and that it's okay not to be glamorous all the time. So next is quotes, and I think it'd be silly to include anything other than Humans of New York. Fortunately, a friend of mine worked with Humans of New York when they were in Pakistan. Her name is Haya. We told you guys about her before, the one with the Emmy and Oscar for her documentary. It's pretty amazing. While working with Humans of New York, she said they got rejected way more times than not while traveling around trying to find people to interview. And I think that is a huge lesson in and of itself. Get permission and get ready to face rejection. I mean, one story they did ended up turning into $2 million to free bonded laborers in Pakistan through this woman, and it's just amazing. They sit with people, talk to them, take a quality picture wherever they are in ways that the subject is comfortable with, sometimes hiding identity completely, and then they choose the best part of the interview and post it online. It's incredible, and I love how the dude is nowhere to be seen in these people's stories, but more on that later. Our last technique is what we call insight, and a person whose work I really admire is my new friend Helena. Her work has been recognized by Nikon, the New York Times, and she's had exhibitions in Europe, America, and Africa. The best part about her is that she is self-taught. Like many of you, English is her second language, and the ability to articulate and depict in the way she does is very inspiring. I chose her for insight because she's a good example of what happens when someone tells the stories of where they are from. When I look at her photos and read her stories, I think there's just no way I could do that about Ethiopia. I'd only see the foreign, the unfamiliar, and try to portray that. I could do it about my own life and experience though, and I do try. Here's the advice Helena had for you all in terms of storytelling.
So the most important thing for me is to have a purpose whenever we're trying to tell a story through an image or a text. So you have to be able to understand what you're trying to say. and I know it's gonna take some time. At least from my experience, it took me a while to get there. So the more I was out there shooting, the more I was able to understand what I want to say. And for me, it was to talk about people in my community who I see as resilient, but that's not how they have been portrayed for a long time. So I think it's important for me to have that clarity and understanding of what I want to say with my work. And then I think the text will come afterwards. I mean, once you have the story, I think you'll be able to write about it without any problem.
So I think you get the message. Good photos and good stories equal influence. I hope you all get stronger as photographers and storytellers, and that I can see the growth and impact you have on social media. But be careful.
Because with great power comes great responsibility.
As international storytellers, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. 1, try to avoid portraying yourself or others from the outside of a community as a savior that comes in and changes everything. It's tempting, and the praise you get when showing yourself this way can be addictive. Trust me, it happens to the best of us. You put something online and everyone's like, oh, you're doing such great work. When in reality, it's the people that are there, struggling and fighting every day, that deserve their stories told. Next, be conscious and responsible about your photography and your stories. Make sure you have permission and that the consent you receive is informed. Haya said that their rule when taking photos and interviews was, if when asked they hesitate, we don't do it. Students need permission from parents or school, and adults need to understand the entirety of what you are doing. And try and take as much of your bias out about a story as you can. It's hard, we all have limited perspectives, I know, but be fair to a place and to people. Take Rasul, for example, kneeling there on the left. He was a happy kid that never went hungry or cold at night, but when I made a project to try and raise money for the school and community, I used this picture. Not at all the cheerful Rasul that I knew, but I thought it would garner the most attention. In the process though, everyone that was moved by it gave something, but also gained an incomplete, inaccurate story, and that was my fault. So be careful, it's a powerful tool you wield. So maybe you're thinking, well, what's an example of this done in a respectful way? Well, we don't have to look far, but first,
Question.
what is the name of the Humans of New York guy? Humans of New York has over 8 million followers and almost 5,000 posts, and I literally only found one post that has a picture of Brandon Stanton, which was to promote a podcast where he shares his storytelling secrets. That's using this thing the right way. But what if you want to show yourself doing good and living life, you might ask? Well, I have a good example of someone doing that too. I don't know her, but she goes by Chelsea Kawai online, and she's all about that adventure, travel, music festival, slow motion travel video life. But recently, she had a post about helping rhinoceros in Africa, which sounds like a disaster when it comes to the kind of story told. And she does have a picture of herself, but it isn't like the others, where she is the lone figure wandering the wild world. She's with a team. She's only a small portion of the photo. She is not the obvious subject. And if you read what she wrote, she does some really key things. First, after establishing the story, she credits the people who are responsible for the work. She has a compelling narrative that includes their names and roles. Then, I think this is rare but important, she establishes that her role is not vital or necessary, but that she is part of a bigger movement to make the world a better place. Not a savior, but still able to try and help those deep in the struggle by telling their story and chipping in. This is a great example of how to include yourself without falling into the savior trap. Okay, so how do we bring this all together? Well, I thought it might be useful for you to see a demo of how I would go about capturing a photo from technical and storytelling standpoints and then writing about it. With the permission of a really special place, I was able to do so just for you guys, here in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. Okay, so now we're gonna go in and do some storytelling with photo and writing, and I'm gonna show you kind of the process that I go through. So I'm here with two friends. Burhan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Burhan. I'm a friend of David. We're here at Macedonia, home for elderly and mentally disabled.
And I'm Mike, and I work here in Macedonia. I volunteer here for 7 years, and I'm still volunteer. I live here. This is Macedonia, home for the elderly.
Great. So there are how many people? 2,000 here?
Yeah, currently the number of beneficiaries is 2,000.
Okay, so there's a lot of really interesting stories here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to film myself photographing different people that have agreed to tell their stories, and then take you through the process of how I would represent that in writing in a way that's fair to the people and fair to the people that are here, especially making a difference every day. Like Mike, he's been here for 7 years, and Burhan, who comes regularly.
Yeah, regularly 5 years.
Great. All right, let's get to it. So here we have Robel Johans. He was living and working in Dubai 5 years ago when he got in a car accident. After money ran out and he had no support system, he ended up on the street without the ability to move. The Macedonia Center picked him up, and now here he is, seated and happy. So I was taking pictures of him from eye level because I thought that was an angle that was unique and that most people don't see him at. That background had a lot of distractions though, so I came to the other side, and I thought that was a little better, but I wanted to get in closer because I thought I could capture more of his emotion and still tell his story with the wheelchair without showing the whole thing. Then after that I went behind the post and tried to get some foreground, moved down, tried to get a little framing, and just give myself some choices so that later I had the ability to choose which one I liked. Gideon Mullah was 28 when he had a mysterious stroke that left him completely paralyzed. This was a really special photo session because he got really excited when I took the camera out, and he can't talk, he can't move, but he started smiling and making noise, and I asked Burhan if he could sit next to him because their connection is a really special one. I asked them to look at each other, something that I often do. And I think it really brings out the humanity of people when they just look at each other and kind of forget about the camera. I wanted to capture some of their connection that may have not been shown in the face, but as it progressed, it became clear that the story was more about his excitement than anything else. So I went behind Burhan, got some nice side light of him, and as they continued to interact, I just moved around and tried to take as many photos as possible, so that I could, in the end, see if I could capture that special energy between them. Now, if I was in savior mode, I would post something like this, me with him, but as we've said, that's not really the responsible thing to do, so I won't. Okay, Sergeant Johannes Sagatu was in the military, retired, and then through unfortunate events that happened to many veterans, he ended up homeless. He couldn't move at all, so it was a challenge to try and photograph him in the positive spirit that I found him, but I tried. I first met him without the camera, and then he asked me, "Don't you want a picture?" So I came back, and of course we took our picture together. Okay, so here we have Burhan Gudeta, who I was struggling to keep up with in Spanish. He was classified as a genius in high school, but he also suffered from schizophrenia. So many men and women at this place were once high in society, but then one thing went wrong. There was an amazing front light on him. It was so nice to meet him. Dagnan Chusase is a lab assistant, and Enatu Belete is a social worker. They both live and work at the center. I told them to put their arms around each other to make them a little more comfortable, and also move up to get into the front light. It's amazing work that they do. Okay, last but not least was Michael. I wanted to show him in the middle of everything, and the lighting was nice and soft in that afternoon shade. He was an interesting subject because he told me that he was uncomfortable in front of a camera, so I took a lot of pictures and just tried to talk to him so that he would forget that the camera was there. He said something really profound to me while we were walking, and I wanted to be able to find a picture that matched that sentiment. I think this one was it. It's amazing that he does what he does for free. As we were leaving, a few beneficiaries started to gather and ask us to take their photos. You know, photography is so amazing to me because I feel like I use the camera as a shield sometimes. But when I'm doing it right, it becomes more like a bridge. And the chance to connect with these stories, meet these special people, see the before and afters and the difference that the place makes, and meet these heroes working every day to help once helpless people become competent, it was really special. This was not my original intention, but what started as a place to film a demo became, for me, a place that I will support as long as I can. If you want to show appreciation to them for letting us use their place, and more importantly, support them in their mission, I'm starting a fundraiser to help support their cause. It will be in the video description below.
Bro, that's deep.
Okay, I hope that gave you some insight as to how this process might go, because now it's your turn. Before I give you your assignment though, I have to say that I did some research and clearly you guys have all the tools you need to be great storytellers. I think this is the potential you all have, like Helena, Haya, Asel, and Brandon, to tell us stories and show us the world in ways that are from your own mind and life. If every place in the world had this type of native insight, this type of digital storytelling from the people that are really there, imagine how much more accurate and diverse our worldviews could be. So be brave enough to represent yourself and your world in your work. No matter if it's different, no matter if you think it sucks at first, just practice, use what you have, embrace your inner artist, and remember we're in this together, so if it gets too hard, just remember that we are Flex.
And we are not afraid!
Okay, so here's your assignment. Make one social media post that uses the photography and writing tools you have learned here to create a compelling story. Post it to Instagram or social media using the hashtag, and that's it. Try and put as much effort as you can into telling us a story that moves us. It could be funny, sad, inspiring, enlightening, whatever. Just show us your best stuff. And in return, as promised, you will get a link that has all of the raw footage from our workshop. From day one to finish, everything I filmed is yours. This is some 4K, drone, and my beloved slow-mo, all of it. Don't judge me though about the quality. Video is a beast. One condition is that you share what you make. And as a bonus, if you do something with the footage and want some help or advice, you can contact me and I will do all I can to get your montage solid. And of course, for all your posts, you will get the comments and likes, but more importantly, the appreciation from us as we try to make sure that every part of the world has capable and conscious storytellers. Deal? Oh, and for the winner of the webinar quiz, that also finished the assignment on time, of course, I will be giving you my super rare glass orb. This thing has been all over the world with me, and it's been great for capturing things in a way that is unique and easy. Plus it fits in a square for Instagram. So remember, use what you have, embrace your inner artist, and through social media, using your photography and writing skills, get our attention. Good luck, everyone. I hope to see your stories soon.